So anyway, that was then. Fast forward many years later, now I work to support people with arthritis in all its forms. I love my job because I know firsthand how tough it can be living with a chronic disease and all the different areas of the life of your life it can affect. So agenda. So just looking at overall health, what does that look like for you? You know, the different effects. I'm going to talk about grief and loss because I realize really the importance of processing feelings with any kind of chronic disease, especially feelings of loss that can often accompany arthritis. And for any family members that are on this call, I know how tough it must be to watch your loved one deal with this. For years, I watched my parents try to figure out how to support me because, you know, my disease was all over the place. And of course, my emotions were all over the place as well. So it's really a tough road that affects the entire family and the network of the family. So let's talk about ourselves. You know, what are the effects that arthritis has on ourselves? So, you know, when you're thinking, I want this to be a little bit of a self-reflection. So not just educational, but self-reflection for yourself as well. Okay. So when you think about health, your health, I want you to think about what comes to mind first. What facet or area of your mind comes, of your life comes to mind first. And I'm going to guess that it might be physical for a couple of reasons. I mean, first of all, of course, society promotes physical health. Physical health is very important, but it's just as important to be healthy mentally. And that is often kind of misunderstood and almost like de-emphasized in society. Also, of course, we think probably physical because we're all on here because we have a physical rheumatic disease, right? We know what it's like to feel pain and stiffness and nausea. We know what it's like to be utterly exhausted. I could really just go on and on with the physical effects of these diseases, but we're all familiar with that already, okay? So what I would like to talk to you today is about what an important role mental health plays in your overall wellness. So here are some quotes that were taken from a research study done with young adults with rheumatic diseases. And I'm sure that some of these might sound very familiar to you. So, I mean, just some of the effects that having arthritis can have. And it's so unpredictable. So it can affect social life. The second one I hear a lot, just that others don't recognize the seriousness and unpredictability, right? So there's that lack of validation when society hears arthritis. It's like, oh, you know, especially if you're young, oh, how can you have that? Or that's just like, it's almost like minimized. So it can be very devalidating. And here's another one, a really tough one that I hear as well, right? This is an example how arthritis can affect your social life. The unpredictability can, you know, affect your ability to partake in events with friends, you know, and I'm sure all of you can think of examples of this, but I mean, there's been times in my life, I remember specifically that we bought tickets when I was young to go to Wonderland, and guess what? That day came and I was not feeling well. My knee flared up or my ankle or whatever. It can just affect everything. So planning ahead can be tricky. And ultimately, this can affect your like social systems, your support systems. So it's really important to approach health as a whole rather than a series of separate factors. And like I said earlier, there are different, you know, facets of health. So of course, you know, the mental, physical, social, financial, spiritual, environmental, vocational, like these are all kind of facets of your overall health. And it's important to recognize the facets because they have strong connections and they influence each other. You know, if one dimension of well-being is out of balance, all the others are affected. So like I said, you know, just I guess just even going back to that example with me and Wonderland, or and I'm sure you all have your own examples, but if that disease affects your ability to do something, it creates a thought which create feelings, right? It's not just about the physical. And I mean, I could see that from that word. I don't even know what it was called, but that word thing that Isabel put together or Brienne put together that showed like all the different, what was it called? Sorry.
It was the word.
Okay. But it was like you can see that anxiety and depression were right up there. You can see all these, and I mean, it's not just the arthritis. Of course, at this age, there's so many different stresses, but that is having JIA is definitely, another stressor on top of everything else. So let's talk about how arthritis can affect you mentally. I mean, we know that pain is exhausting physically, but it's also very exhausting mentally as well. And it's important again to realize, the connection, because when we are stressed, our brain releases cortisol, which is inflammatory. And that's why it's really important to be like proactive with stress management rather than reactive. Okay. And we'll talk about this a little bit. So a poll. Let's talk about changes that you feel have affected your life. The arthritis has affected your life. And I think we were going to do a poll on this, Isabel.
Yeah, so we're going to do Menti again. So it's going to be the same link as before, and we'll send it again in the chat. I am going to steal your screen sharing.
Yeah, of course. Just thinking about any changes that arthritis has had on your life. And it could be anything from, big changes to even, I hear young people say even high heels, right? They used to like love wearing a certain shoe and now they can't. So it can be really any kind of changes that you can think of. Google Notes, I see so far. Okay. Accommodations are important for school. Career choice, yeah. Hard to go out with friends, yeah. Diet, social life, school, travel, clothing, sports, social activity. So friendships is, I've learned that if something is big, it's been said a lot, right, Isabel? So I see like friendships is big. Reduce mobility, concentration, yep, it can absolutely. Missing school, yeah. All of these are real changes and loss. Okay, can I go back to my screen, Isabel, or do I just reshare screen? Let's see.
Sorry, you'll just reshare your screen now.
Okay. Okay. Hold on for 1 sec. I don't know why I'm not seeing. Okay. So grief, the stages of grief and loss were first described by Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. I just want to change. Okay. Relating to the grief or bereavement that is felt when somebody close to them has died. But this process is often experienced by people with arthritis as well, right? There could be many losses in many areas of a person's life, and we just seen that when we went through that, all the different losses, right? So, just even the loss of ability to be able to partake in something that you used to enjoy and love, friendships, relationships, career we saw in there, financial instability, and this can be ongoing. So it's really important to process feelings of loss, to effectively grieve your losses and being able to cope and come to terms with your new reality, right? Eventually moving forward in a way that accommodates any new limitations that you might have. So looking at the stages of grief, you know, denial, shock, anger, bargaining, all of these feelings are completely normal. So don't be alarmed if any of these come up for you. And again, you may you may experience these stages in a different order. It's not always linear. You may skip some, you may revisit some. So it's not like written in stone, but these are some of the stages that we can go through when we experience loss of any sort. So feelings of grief may just, only become problematic when one becomes stuck in them and unable to move on over time towards better coping. So adjustment and hope. How do we get to adjustment and hope stage of grief? So let's talk about that. So recognizing that acceptance doesn't happen overnight. It's really an ongoing process of really learning about yourself, adjusting and adapting to your new norm without judging yourself in the process. So what does that mean? It just, if you're unable to do certain things anymore, just finding a new way to do it or finding something new to do, to be able to live within your current means, like what you're able to do without judging yourself and saying, oh, I used to be able to, play soccer 3 times a week and I can't do that anymore. And that can really bring up feelings of guilt as well. So it's important to, practice self-compassion with yourself, learning new coping strategies, letting go of unhealthy coping strategies. And some of these things is just maybe new to a lot of people, just depending on where your arthritis is too, is pacing and prioritizing, delegating, practicing stress relaxation techniques, placing boundaries. So that's an important one too. If you're kind of like a people pleaser and you want to do everything for people, but your energy is low or you're just not feeling well, placing those boundaries and saying, hey, you know what? I can't. And that's important as well, because most often what our disease is invisible. So people don't see it, right? So you could feel really bad, but it's not shown on the outside. So people might have unfair expectations of you, okay? Of course, taking medicines and reaching out for support. So, like we said, this is a chronic disease, reaching out for support, all kinds of physical, mental, everything. It's empowering to do that. So just looking, a quick overview of cognitive behavioral therapy. So, that's just looking at faulty or negative thinking patterns. And I just want to expand a little bit on it, okay? So here's a tool that you might want to try if you're experiencing increased anxiety and depressive thinking. And we did see that, when Isabel did that word puzzle thing. Still don't know what it's called, but its anxiety was up there on the list, and so was depressive thinking. So, if you find yourself sometimes overthinking events or situations, catastrophizing, these are some of the examples of faulty or negative thinking, and this can become a pattern if not addressed. So it's important when looking at, these 3, this diagram with the thoughts and the feelings and the actions, it's important to recognize the direct correlation between your feelings and the thoughts that created the feelings. So looking at feelings, they come from thoughts. Always remember that. So it's important, again, to recognize that feelings come from thoughts, right? So cognitive behavioral therapy is about identifying any faulty thinking patterns and challenging them and changing them. Ultimately, this really changes the way you feel and the way you behave, i.e. your actions. So when you start getting into a pattern of faulty thinking, it can really just become your normal way of thinking, and that can contribute to feelings of anxiety and feelings of despair. We may see our situation in an overly negative way, and these feelings may contribute to increase unhelpful behavioral patterns as well. So when you notice a negative feeling, and remember going back to that diagram before, feelings always come from thoughts. So go back to the thought, ask yourself what you were thinking, what meaning are you attaching to that situation? Some people find it, you can do it in your mind. Obviously, you're not always in a spot to be able to write it down, but some people find it helpful to write the thought down, but just even challenge the thought in your mind. Is what I'm saying to myself completely a true and fair thought? Is there another way that I can look and respond to this event or this situation? Is there another way? Right? Or is there some distortions in my thoughts that I've not questioned? So just kind of, again, just starting to become aware of your thoughts. This is a great workbook that I tell a lot of clients about. It's called Mind Over Mood, and it's actually a workbook. And it's CBT. It's just looking again, kind of digging in deeper about your thoughts and identifying any kind of negative thought process that you might be engaging in. So responding to depressive thinking, challenging negative self-talk is a big one. We often are so negative and so judgmental in ourselves when we wouldn't say that to other people. So, just starting to, again, going back and starting to recognize your thinking, your thoughts. And a lot of the time we're being harsh on ourselves. So, starting to challenge that. Physical exercise, again, doing that with what your current capability reason. Okay. But physical exercise can be great, especially in nature, right? Hiking, anything in nature. I don't know about you, but it kind of clears some brain space. So again, support, being creative, being open to learning new coping strategies. And again, just proactive with stress management instead of reactive. So, finding something that fills your bucket and being proactive with it. Meditation is a huge one. I'll expand a little bit about on that as well. And again, if feelings of depression persist, it may be helpful to, seek some more treatment, even a clinical assessment if necessary. Okay. So again, just, some more self-reflection on you. Just being, kind of building on that, being proactive with stress management and coping strategies to refill your inner resources or your inner bucket, especially in times of change and loss. So going through grief can deplete your inner resources. So it's really important for you to fill them up proactively as much as possible. Doing this can help you navigate the grief process in a healthy manner. And remember, it's okay to cry and release emotions, right? This is okay. Some of these coping strategies can really help to promote releasing and processing feelings that are associated with loss. And again, looking at these different, these different suggestions they're just suggestions, but brainstorm ideas and activities for you that bring you joy and hope, but again, are still achievable with how you feel physically. Always being aware of that. Sometimes these activities have to be altered or changed depending on where you're at with your arthritis. Maybe you can't go for a walk. Maybe it's just about because your ankles or your knees or your hips are hurting. Maybe sitting in the backyard or just finding something that you can do. I have to do that a lot too, just depending on how I'm feeling, is adjust my activities. So I wanted to expand a little bit on meditation and mindfulness, as I feel it really deserves a slide on its own. And I know probably a lot of you have heard, or maybe you've tried. And I mean, let's face it, meditation and mindfulness are not easy. It's like any skill, it takes practice. Practice makes progress. But, if you can learn how to meditate and even practice mindfulness, they're really powerful tools to help manage anxiety. It just takes time and practice. And here is this one that I've put on here is an example of one of the channels on YouTube that I find a lot of the younger people that I work with really like, because she's young as well. But there's so many free ones on YouTube as well, right? And mindfulness doesn't need to be like a formal practice. You can practice mindfulness anywhere. Like I said, I go in the backyard and I feed all the little critters like nuts, like chipmunks and stuff, blue jays. And that's my mindfulness as well. You can do mindfulness like a walk, just even walk down your street and pretend it's the first time that you've walked down that street. Notice things using all your senses. So mindfulness can be practiced anywhere, and it just gives your brain a little bit of space, especially if you're dealing with a lot of anxiety. Any effects on us. But what happens when one family member, gets arthritis? It can affect all family members, right? Lifestyle changes that sometimes are necessary to make can have a profound effect on the person with arthritis and their relationships at home. So often the person with arthritis has different needs at different times, just kind of depending on how they're feeling. The family as well, I mean, can experience a great amount of stress and anxiety themselves as all of the lives in the family are changed. So an example of this would be, say, a family that loves to go skiing every year, right? That's their vacation time. And now maybe one member has arthritis and can no longer do that. So this can create a lot of feelings. It can even create feelings of guilt, on the person with arthritis if they see their arthritis is becoming an added burden on the family. So lots to think about. It's not just on ourselves. So for the family, just some tips on how to support. So being honest with the person, don't say, oh, everything's going to be okay, because when somebody is in a lot of pain and they're frustrated and exhausted, that's probably not what they want to hear. Just be with them, right? They say it sucks to have this. Yeah, it does. And I can't imagine, right? Just supporting. Help them accept their pain and fatigue. Because when we believe it's a bad thing and we think that we have to get rid of it, we'll struggle, because sometimes that leads to pushing ourselves too much beyond our limitations. So accept it, right? It's and help to support through that, just going back that process of grief and change. Most don't want to be labeled as sick, so please don't oversympathize or feel sorry. Most young people, especially that I know and I work with, do not want that. Just ask how you can support, how you can encourage and empower. So as a reminder to everyone that's on here that has a rheumatic disease, right? Know and accept your strengths and weaknesses. Recognize and reframe, again, any self-defeating thoughts. Proactively engage in activities to increase self-worth and are joyous. Reach out for support. Be open to finding new activities that you enjoy. Big one is define yourself by who you are now and not what you did before. And setting realistic goals that work for you now, very important. Challenging negative self-talk. Recognize and understand that you have both positive and negative feelings, and don't judge yourself for either. Be neutral, right? Allow those feelings to come, investigate them, but don't be defined by them, because they're your thoughts. And remember, thoughts can be changed, right? Just like we spoke about earlier. Identify and change any faulty thinking patterns that you might be engaging in, becoming aware that your feelings and your responses can be changed by starting to recognize and changing your thought patterns is really an empowering mentality to grasp. So where we've came, I spoke about my story back in the 80s. There's been huge advances in medicine for chronic inflammatory diseases. So it really gives hope. We discussed, the importance of filling your bucket, filling your inner resources daily, okay? Because there's a lot of things that are beyond your control when you live with a chronic disease, but there are some things that are within your control. I find when I really like proactively fill my inner bucket every day, and I have a really tough day, either with the arthritis or with whatever work or personal life, I respond very differently from how I would when my bucket was empty. So I want to end this by giving hope. There's huge advancements in disease medication. There's lots of support now. This Take a Pain Check is amazing. Arthritis Society Canada supports people like yourselves with all the impacts of arthritis, from PTs to OTs to social workers. We all support people with arthritis, and you can always reach out to them as well, okay? There's camps geared for children. They are amazing. And here's some more just resources for mental health, okay? And again, if you ever feel that you need more support, reach out to your GP, or there's always support at the Arthritis Society as well. I love this. I am not having the life that I planned. However, I am planning the life that I have. So I love that quote. And just here's some references, and that is me. Do we have any questions?
Yeah. Sorry, I think I cut someone off. Go ahead, please ask questions. A couple have been sent to me, so I can ask after.
Sure.
So in the chat, Lori said, what is an example of pacing we can do?
Pacing, sure. So I would say with pacing is just recognizing what your current limitations are, right? So if you wake up, and I know this happens to me a lot, Lori, it's like I get up and I want to do I have 4 loads of laundry to do, and I have, dinner to cook, and I have to do this and I have to do that. Pacing is just recognizing what my current limitations are. So I might not be able to do 4 loads of laundry, because if I do all that at the end, I can't move, right? So, and then that affects me mentally. So, maybe doing 1 load of laundry and just, just letting the others go to maybe tomorrow or when I have more energy, and just being okay and allowing that for myself, like not judging myself for that, right? This is what my current capabilities are today. And that's what I'm going to do. And that's okay. That's okay. Yeah. I hope that answered your question. Okay.
So another question that was in the chat is, how can we approach healthcare professionals when seeking help? Often our interactions with rheumatologists is focused on the physical aspect of the disease, not the mental health.
Yes, for sure. And you're absolutely right. And like we just spoke about, mental health is like a huge facet of health, right? And it is. Today's world, is hard to access mental health. It's harder now. So I would say, take advantage of any kind of community mental health resources that are online. Get those, books. The one that I posted is great. If depending on your situation, if people do have coverage, like either through their parents, it just depends on everybody's situation, because some people would have some coverage for, further mental health support, a psychotherapist or a mental health specialist. And like I said, at the Arthritis Society too, we work to support, we're nonprofit. So people will come to, if they need some more support for physiotherapy, occupational therapy, or me, like people, I have other social work colleagues as well. So yes, Canadian Mental Health Association, you're right, there's lots of community resources as well for mental health support, but just finding them and taking advantage of them. But again, it's just being proactive of finding them. But I know it is difficult for sure.
Did anyone else have any questions that they wanted to speak up on? I think a few more were sent, but if anyone wants to talk. Okay. So one of the questions were, what can I do as an ally to reduce stress for friends with arthritis?
Oh, that's such a nice question. Just support them, right? I would say support them as much as you can, just even in the back of your mind, being aware of their limitations. because I found this with my friends that really understand and I feel most comfortable are really aware of my limitations. So they wouldn't say, for example, hey Pam, let's go zip lining, and it's like a huge ladder, like to, because then as a person, I can't do that. Yeah, it's tough. So I would say just always check in with them and see, how are you feeling today? Do you feel like you can go to the mall or whatever your planned activities are? Do you feel like you're capable of doing this today, or should we find something else to do, right? Just kind of always doing that check-in and finding out how you can support them and what their limitations are. And that often means adjusting for the friends as well, right? It's like if you plan to go to the mall or walk around for 2 hours and your friend is not feeling well, are you able to do that? Or can we go for a little bit and maybe just sit and have tea for, just kind of that open-mindedness is very helpful, I would think.
So, okay, let me grab another question. How do you balance being overly sympathetic versus not caring?
Yeah, I know there's a line between that, right? Because you don't want to be over sympathetic and feel like make the person feel like they're so different. And I would say just kind of gently just doing that maybe check-in again is um, you know, not automatically doing everything for them, right? Not automatically doing everything for them. Let them do things on their own, but just doing that check-in, like kind of maybe watching even body language. So if they're struggling, saying taking the lid off the water bottle, that's a classic one, right? A lot of people with arthritis struggle with that. But instead of just grabbing it right away, just kind of knowing their personality, because everybody's personality is a bit different too, right? So knowing their personality and yeah, just offering support, kind of watching them. And if doing that check-in, how are you feeling today? What do you need from me today? Right? Um, if you had activities planned, how are you feeling about that today? Or can we switch it up and, is it a day that we need to switch up our plans and maybe sit on the couch or go for lunch or do something that's more, just more passive? I hope that answered your question. It's a tough one though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If anyone does want to jump in too and ask questions, you're more than welcome to. If not, I'll just go through the messages. Okay, what are some day-to-day ways to positively incorporate mental health needs?
So that's a great question as well. And that's just kind of going back to what I spoke about like being proactive with mental health. Just finding something that fills your inner bucket, right? Like proactively. And it looks different for everybody. Like for me, I do the mindfulness and meditation. I put like headphones on and I go on YouTube and I try to incorporate that into I'd like to say every day, but I don't. Probably 3 or 4 times a week. And then I incorporate mindfulness, like even just putting on headphones and listening to music, just finding, on that list that we kind of went through or just brainstorming on your own is things that you like to do, that gives you joy, that makes you feel good. Like I like listening to 80s music with my headphones on and watering my plants, right? You guys might not get that, but that gives me joy, right? It's like, so just proactively kind of finding what gives you joy and doing it instead of waiting till you're like all stressed and then so proactively. I find even they have some really great short, like morning meditations on YouTube, which is like maybe, 15 minutes, right? Yeah. So just being proactive about incorporating it into your day, and it could look like anything that's you like to do, that you enjoy, and that is not going to impact where you're at physically.
So, all right. So another question. I think we've got time for a couple more. Yeah. So what are some signs that mental health is failing or being impacted? It's not always obvious. Or is,
Yeah.
yeah, it is not.
Um, I would say if you're noticing, and you know how we spoke earlier about just noticing thoughts and feelings. So just kind of noticing how you're feeling, and even you could even write this down in your phone, like on a calendar, just kind of on it using even a scaling strategy. Like, how are you feeling today? Like from one, really bad and 10 you're just feeling so overwhelmed and stressed and anxious. Just kind of maybe trying that, or just starting to just become aware of how you're feeling. And if you do notice that you're feeling a lot more anxiety, you feel really really down, you're not engaging with your friends as much, you're pulling away, like sort of like isolating yourself. Those, your eating habits have changed, your sleeping habits have changed. Like if you're noticing all, these, again, because, mental health impacts physical health, right? So it can impact sleeping. If anxiety is, you're experiencing insomnia or disturbed sleep patterns, there's different signs. It comes out differently for everybody, but just kind of that self-awareness and being aware of how you're feeling. If your baseline is different than it was, say, a year ago or 2 years ago. And yeah.
So, okay. So rheumatic disease comes with chronic pain, which can really take a toll on my body, which can make me feel a lot of anxiety or depression, and can cause it to last longer. How do I deal with these risks?
Yeah, of course. It's scary sometimes. It can be scary to get a diagnosis of chronic disease with so much unpredictability, right? And I hear that a lot too with the young people, with just a lot of future fears. What is my future going to look like? What am I capable of doing, or what am I going to be capable of doing? What is this disease going to look like? So that's very normal, to have those fears and those anxieties about that. Again, get as much support as you can and be proactive with mental health, right? Is like, and if you feel that you're trying to like build up that inner bucket, normalizing even feelings, those, remember we went through those feelings of grief, right? The guilt, the depression, the anger, like all those feelings are completely normal. So just being aware not to judge yourself for those as well. But if you find that you're maybe getting stuck at, like, say, depression, or you're not able to move forward, just being, again, as proactive as possible, is reaching out for support and, yeah, doing things for yourself as well.
I think we have time for one more question, maybe two. This one's interesting. Is what are some tools or apps, things like that I can use?
Yeah, tools and apps, meaning for like a coping strategy. Do they mean like, say, like meditation apps, or because there's lots of mental health resources, like community mental health resources that are like apps, like Bounce Back is one. I think I had put a bunch on, hold on. There's a lot of different ones, like community mental health resources, or you can reach out to organizations that know this, like the Arthritis Society, for example, like that, because I send resources to young people all the time, just via email. So even look up, there's a lot, if they're referring to like coping strategy resources, there's a lot, like depending on what you're looking for, right? If you're looking, because I get a lot of my meditations on YouTube for free. And the one that I had posted earlier, is her name is Lavender. She's very good. So a lot of the young people that I work with really like her and can relate to her. And so if you have a chance, look up her. And if it's for mental health, for like anxiety and depression, you can, even looking up 211ontario.ca is a great resource as well. I don't know who's familiar with that, but there's a lot of resources if you look up 211ontario.ca as well, the community resources.
Awesome. I think that brings us to exactly 11. If anyone else has a like burning question they really want to ask, put it in the chat now. We can squeeze in another minute. If not, then I think we're going to go into our break. Okay, let's go into our break then. If anyone has questions that they'd like to ask more in private or anything too. Oh, we got one more. Oh, it's more of a suggestion. So Berkey said that I know most people here are from Canada and other countries, but in Australia, and then put a link. And they have more resources at that link in Australia. That's awesome. So for anyone in Australia, check that out. All right, let's go to our break then.
I'm also going to put some, I'm going to put some in the, just from my slides. I hope this works. I don't know if it does.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, just some extra kind of community resources as well. And then I could put, for those who are interested, and then I could also paste, I'm also going to paste the link for Lavender,
Awesome.
the mindfulness, the meditation and mindfulness channel, sorry, on YouTube as well.
Well, thank you so much, Pamela. I think, well, like I said, or if anybody has any, we'll send a follow-up email. So if you have any additional resources or things, we'd love to be able to compile them and create a virtual swag, I think. So that would be great. And with that, we will go to break. I think it's been just really informative, Pamela, to see what works. And I think it's really lovely that you bring your lived experience with JIA as well. So, you've been through some of these challenges firsthand. So it's nice to see you sort of bring both perspectives.
Well, so, you as well, Lori.
Yeah, I try my best. I won't lie, my teenage years were a rough time, but I managed to get through it somehow. That grieving cycle was definitely very telling, I think. So anyways, all that being said, this will be our sort of health break time.